Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Rosenstein, I very much appreciate the statements that you've made here this morning about your commitment to addressing the heroin and opioid epidemic. As you may be aware, in New Hampshire, we are second only to West Virginia in terms of the percentage of overdose deaths we have. And this year, sadly, we have seen carfentanil arrive in New Hampshire and have had 6 people die in the state from carfentanil. And I understand that the department is looking at reprioritizing efforts to address drug enforcement. But I guess I just disagree with you in a couple of areas. One is on eliminating the COPS Anti-Heroin Task Force grant program. Senator Feinstein talked about her efforts to start a focus on meth, which has been successful. It was looking at that successful model that Senator Leahy and I did in trying to direct some support to local law enforcement. And while I think a lot of our DEA agents and our federal law enforcement officials, they do a great job, we just don't have as many of them in New Hampshire as we do local law enforcement. And we need to provide some resources for local law enforcement because they're the people who day in and day out are actually on the front line. So I would urge you to go back and rethink whether eliminating that task force, the anti-heroin task force grant program is really in the interest of what we're all trying to accomplish. And I would also ask what you're doing to address you talked about meeting with China to look at what we're seeing in mail order drugs that are coming into the United States. There was a story this weekend by the New York Times reporting on the dark web that is being used to sell synthetic drugs and opioids like fentanyl. Can you tell me what you're doing to shut down those sites?
Yes, Senator. First of all, with regard to the task forces, I completely respect your view on that. The point I'd simply like to make is we have different ways of addressing the same issue, but we are committed to spending more resources on heroin and opioid drugs.
Can I just interrupt you, because the other issue that has been brought up by several of my colleagues has been the drug courts, which we have found to be very effective in New Hampshire, and yet you've reduced funding for drug courts in the 2018 budget.
I had the number. I'm not certain about the reduction in drug courts.
From 43 million to 40 million.
Okay, right.
And while may not seem like a lot of money in New Hampshire, that's a lot of money.
Yep, I understand. Oh, it's a lot of money to me too, Senator, but I think it does reflect nonetheless a commitment. That $40 million does reflect our confidence that that program can be effective, and I'm sure that if that program is funded, I'll work with the Office of Justice Programs. I know I will work with the Office of Justice Programs to make sure it's spent effectively. To address your question about China, as I said, I've been in this job for 6 weeks. I have not met with China, but I do hope to talk with DEA and with the Postal Inspection Service and any other federal agencies that have a stake in this to figure out what we can do. The problem with the dark web, and I'm familiar with the story you're referring to, is that it's a very effective tool for criminals to commit crime with limited ability to be detected. But we do have ways to catch those criminals. We had a case just a couple of years ago involving a dark website in which the defendant was caught and successfully prosecuted in New York and will no longer be in position to use the internet as a tool to distribute drugs and to facilitate other crimes. So we do have the ability to catch these offenders, but it is challenging because of the technological burdens. But I will work with FBI, DEA, Secret Service, and other agencies to do everything that we can to get ahead of that problem.
Thank you. And if there are legal changes in policy that need to be made, I hope you will share that with us so we can try and support your efforts. Let me go to another topic very quickly, because in April, the Marshal Service publicly released that they estimate the round-the-clock protective detail for Education Secretary DeVos to be $1 million a month. By the end of September, this is going to total $8 million. I just wonder if you can tell me why the Marshal Service is playing the role in her protective detail. I understand 4 to 8 deputy marshals at a time on the detail. When the Department of Education has their own security team, can you tell me who made this determination about why this was necessary? And my understanding is the only time that this has ever been done before was for the ONDCP drug czar in the 90s.
Senator, I do not know, that decision was made before I was confirmed, but what I'd like to do is look into it and get back to you.
I would appreciate that. I was a governor. I have had credible threats against me. I have never had 4 to 8 people on my detail 24 hours a day. Thank you.
Senator